Hey everybody, Jimmy Kukolski, Elite Lubrication Specialties, and he's a pro and others. Anyway, so I want to talk today about bypass filtration. I get a lot of questions about it, and I get even more questions about what's the best filter for my engine, etc., etc., etc. Let me state this unequivocally that the engineers for Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Porsche, whoever it is, they go through a lot of trouble to properly spec your full flow filtration. And so, you've got your galleries for your rods and mains, you've got your galleries for your cam and lifters, etc., your valve train, and you've got your oil pump. Pumps into your filter, and it goes up into these things. And there's bypass in here, typically at a certain PSI or percentage that it bypasses, okay? The key to this is has to be enough flow to make this system work properly for a few reasons. First of all, obviously you need oil so you don't starve it, kill the engine. Second of all, you're removing heat. You're balancing a pressure system here, right? And it's removing heat and contamination from the parts. It's all integrated. It's all synergistic to the system. And as soon as you start messing with the filter, you start messing with all of this. And here's the biggest reason why. There is a differential pressure, right, in this. And if you increase your beta ratio or your percentage of filtration in this filter, you're going to have a pressure drop over that filter. Now, there's some synthetic medias out there that you can almost match this. But the thing with synthetic media is that they work better. And they work better and capture more stuff, which means they go downhill sooner. Almost always see a differential pressure spike a lot faster than you do in cheap cellulose paper media. So, no matter what you're doing here, unless you're sticking with OEM spec, you start to mess with this system. And let's say, well, I can just put a bigger filter in. Well, what happens is you put a bigger filter, your speed of the fluid drops. And anytime you change velocity of a fluid, you have the very interesting chance of causing cavitation. Anytime you change the direction of a fluid, you can cause cavitation. Cavitation is a big deal in systems like this when they're under pressure or they're under a suction or vacuum. So it's not that you can't do it, it's not that you can't find a better filter that goes in this area. It isn't that it's impossible. It isn't that my grandpa Joe ran a 45-inch long Donaldson filter on a 7.3 power stroke for 400 years and it didn't blow up or this or that. It's not that you can't do it. It's the fact that if you do it, you're taking chances that you probably shouldn't. And if it does work, it's more luck than by design or engineering. And that's what concerns me about this. Now, what is bypass filtration? Bypass filtration bleeds off a small, very small percentage. Let's say 0.1, 0.2% of this between here and here. It bleeds it off and returns it after everything else. Bypass. It's bypassing the system. Typically, your oil pump has enough extra volume and pressure to way more than compensate for this. If it doesn't, you've got another problem. So you're bleeding off very, very small, very slow amount of oil into a very high beta filter with a very high differential pressure. Okay? So, what you're doing is you're super cleaning the oil here. What that does is it makes this a little less relevant to polishing and cleaning the oil. It's just keeping out the big stuff so that it doesn't get in here. But it also takes the duty cycle off of this. Okay? So the little particles that really take a toll, the silt size particles, the 1, 2, 3, 8 micron particles, which are also the film size of your oil, in your bearing parts, it takes the duty cycle off this. So this stays out of bypass longer. If pressure gets too high here, there's a valve in this system, either in the filter head or in the filter itself, that bypasses this filter, and you don't filter at all, because it's better to have some oil that's dirty than no oil that hasn't gone through the filter, okay? So if you keep this filter healthy by putting a secondary filter that's got nothing to do with everything else, you keep everything else healthier too. So there's a couple of benefits to bypass. First of all, contamination, how I just mentioned, keeping the small clearance size particles out, as low count in the oil as possible. Second, you do get a little bit of dwell time here, so you can bring oil temperature down. Third, it removes soot very much better than a full flow ever will. It brings down your duty cycle on this, and then it extends the life of the oil. So let's say you go 10,000 miles on your oil change. Let's say we don't care what oil you're using, but let's say whatever oil you're using at 10,000 miles, you use up 90% of the ad pack in that time. Your TBN is down to 1 or whatever, you've consumed it. That is with this system here. You add a bypass, you add a little more buffer, maybe down to 80%. So you get 20% more oil life out of that. You still change your oil at 10K, right? You're just getting a little more life out of the TBN and some of the AdPack alkaline reserves and stuff like that are in the oil. What you're trying to do is just keep the oil cleaner. That's it. There's no magic to it. You could have the world's worst filter here, and any bypass filter is better than none at all. But obviously there's high beta, very small, 1 micron. You got to be careful you get too much smaller than that. You can strip additives out of the oil. But you go with something that's proven, it works well. But it is a bypass. It is bypassing the system. All right? Got any questions, please reach out to me, Jimmy at elslubrication.com. Thanks.